My goal today is really to talk about composting and also water use and collection, because one of the challenges in any building is what do we do to get water there, and then how do we end up with really good water instead of the stuff that's treated with fluoride and chemicals and chloride and all that stuff. And then also once the water is in the building, what do we do with it? It becomes gray water, which is water that doesn't have poop in it, or does it become black water? So we're going to talk about all those things and talk about how living in an Earthship deals with that. The first thing I want to talk about is how we're going to collect water. We have a cistern that has the ability to collect up to 5,000 gallons of precipitation. And so in this part of Ohio, which is in the southeastern part, there's an average of 38 inches of precipitation a year in an average year. So if you look up online, you can see that there's a formula that tells you about how much water that would be, and I believe it's about 125,000 gallons over the course of a year that we have the potential to collect. So the question becomes, why aren't we collecting water? And why aren't we collecting that water? Because it's really great water. It comes from the sky. As long as I don't live near, and this is not near, a nuclear waste or nuclear power plant or some other kind of factory that is contaminating the air, I got good water. Also, the way that the cistern works on the house is that the water is collected in the middle of the roof, which is not a very good design, but it is the original design for Michael Reynolds' Earthships. He's the architect of Earthships. And then that water runs down the roof and it comes to an area where there's a little drain, and it's about the size of the drain in your sink. So let's say there would be a problem like nuclear fallout. You could take one of those little rubber flat pieces that you can buy at the store when your dish drainer doesn't work properly, and you can put that over the drain and your water would be safe. So we would be the richest people in the area because we'd have 5,000 gallons of really great water if there was ever a contamination. The tank is made with rammed earth tires, and then it's finished off with a cement or concrete mixture, and then it has a blue color that's like swimming pool sealant that's on it, and there's a fiber in the concrete that helps it to be strong so it won't leak. And then we have painted on it different levels of the water so we know where the water is at any given time. We also have a little solar powered aerator in it, so we don't have to worry about things like algae and things like that as a problem. So I want to talk a little bit about then what happens when we bring the rainwater into the house. So it's got to go somewhere. So in an Earthship, traditionally, we have what are called wetlands. And this wonderful planter that's behind me is a sample of a wetland. And the wetland is a really simple machine, basically, and that is that the water comes out of the sinks and the washing machine and the shower, and it comes through a catchment area, which is basically a pipe that has a woman's knee-high stocking attached to it with a pipe clamp. And then that knee-high can collect up any kind of sediment that might have gotten down the drain that wasn't collected up by the dish drainer. So once that water is filtered through the knee-high stocking, it goes through some sand, it goes through gravel, and then the wetland, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper, so that when you reach the end of the wetland, which is to my left, it's about 6 feet deep. And at that end of the wetland, there's some charcoal that the water passes through. And then at the very bottom of the wetland, there are some plastic jugs that I used and smashed to use as boulders because I didn't have big rocks at the time we were building the wetland. So that water keeps coming down until it gets down into that 6 feet. And along the way, it provides moisture for plants. So in this wetland to my right, there's a fig tree that has figs on it, and we're waiting for them because they're super delicious. And then to my left, there's a banana tree. We've had avocado trees in here. We've grown tomato plants. Primarily what I use the wetland for now, besides the plants that I'm mentioning, is to, in the wintertime, to grow greens for winter, and then also my plants for the garden in the springtime. So it's a very versatile tool in an Earthship. And you could build it in any building really, as long as you had the ability to collect that water and hold it. Then what happens when there's too much water? At the end of the wetland to my left, there's a little pipe that goes down all the way to the bottom. And we can see, based on looking down through the pipe, how much water is in the wetland, so what is the level. If it gets too high, then obviously we would need to pump it out. We also have tested the water twice to see if it's potable, and it does meet potable requirements. And we have pumped it out to see how many gallons, and put it back into our cistern that holds the 5,000 gallons. And we can collect about 400 gallons out of this particular wetland. We've never really had to pump the wetland, but if you would have to do it, you can put a tiny little pump down in the PVC pipe that's buried to the bottom of it, and you can pump that water out and pump it to wherever you wanted it to go, because it is potable. Around the farm, we have other rainwater catchment areas. We've used rain barrels in the early days. The cistern that we've used in several different places now has been moved permanently to the tiny house and will be encased in a tire wall, a rammed earth tire wall, so that we have plenty of water in that location. We often get asked questions about how we filter the water that comes out of the cistern. And we are really interested in the cistern providing us with a lot of good bacteria. A cistern is a living, breathing mechanism or organism, and so when the balance of microbes and bacteria that are in that are good, then it all works to be helpful to the human body. So that's what we're aiming for. So when we use water for drinking, we put it through just a sediment filter. And then we have a couple of other situations in the house where we can collect water. So we'll collect the water into a little drinking fountain area, and that water gets filtered through like a Brita kind of filter, so it goes through charcoal. And that's because Jay just extra careful. And that water is cold water that we can access anytime we want to. And then we can, of course, take water out of the sinks, or we can draw water from the outside of the house, and that all that water comes through that initial sediment filter. And that's just a filter that comes from a big box store for any kind of filtering water system, just a little paper filter.